Everyone but the foreperson can be seated. Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
If you please could hand the verdict form to the bailiff. The verdict form is in its proper order. Madam Clerk, please publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the Second Judicial Circuit in and for Leon County, Florida, the State of Florida versus Charles Adelson, case number 2016 CF 3036B, verdict. Count 1. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Count 2. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the indictment, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Count 3. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 3 of the indictment, solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder. So say we all this 6th day of November, 2023.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record. Okay, Happy New Year. Almost New Year, pre-New Year. Hope it is a good one for everyone. This has been I guess I would say very challenging year and very exciting year in equal measure for me. And I am hopeful for the new year. I wanted to talk today about some of the most exciting things that's happened in this case this year. And I even made a little list. But before I do, I want to get to your comments. A few things I forgot about yesterday, which was one is the Stock the Bar party. So let's look at the invite from Deep Dive True Crimes channel. This is the top of it. So this is what I'm talking about. This little with a tag. It says, please bring bullet bourbon or some other spirit, other kind of spirit, which looks like it's part of the invite. So this is the bottom of the invite. And it's that evening. Just very odd to my mind. I mean, doesn't this look like, unless they're going to fill in a different kind of alcohol for each person it goes to, I just find it really odd that that's the one thing that they want. I don't know if this is even the original or if someone created it. Hard to know unless it was not accepted into evidence, unless we see the original copy as a court document. So it wasn't accepted. So I don't know if we'll ever know if that's the original document or not, or if it was something handed in, made up by either Wendy or a fan of this case who's been following this case. Hard to know. Joe Dirt says, we talked about Donna yesterday, a mother's guilt trip and manipulation of a son. It is the strongest thing that can exist. A good son will die for his mom if she asks. Mothers have destroyed their sons' lives, as we all see here. I thought this was a really interesting comment. I'm not sure if I'm fully on board with the idea that Donna ruined Charlie's life, he always seemed to be, from the descriptions I've heard, predisposed to liking to flirt with illegal things. I don't think that was Donna's doing. Any of the kind of, what was it? It was a kind of blackmailing around someone's business. He needed help to get through. Of course, his mom helped him and his dad helped him with their connections get through dental school. But his involvement with steroids, his trips to South America on tourism trips to have relations with girls 18 and under, let's put it that way. I don't think any of that was Donna's doing, but certainly the relationship is enmeshed in this family. They're incredibly enmeshed and dysfunctional. And I agree. I think that to a certain extent, he did this to prove to his parents that he wasn't the Fredo of the family. Remember, he got ripped off the first time. So the second time round, where he gave $50,000 to guys who just took off, the second time around, he was going to show that he could get things done. And I think it's very interesting that Rob Adelson, the eldest son, who is estranged, moved away from this family, is estranged from the rest of the family, and was teased mercilessly for being moral, for returning change that was too much. He said that there's a saying in this family that Charlie's always right because Charlie's never wrong because he's always right. So certainly is a family that props up his ego. Debbie Fox, 5780, says, Roberta, speaking in the voice of Donna Sue, it's ironic, as Charlie says over and over. They are both arrested and housed in the same jail, both suffering with direct observation. Katie, Charlie, and now Donna are all defendants sitting in the same chair, same tables, courtroom, same prosecutor. Well, isn't that a coincidence, buddy? Donna sounds like she thinks she's totally in charge of things. But little does she know the FBI was ready to pounce on her at the airport like Charlie predicted. Coincidence? Right. I believe someone is going to flip. It's just a matter of time. Wouldn't it be something if Wendy flips on them both? Happy 2024. So do you mean by Charlie predicted it? Where Charlie says in the wiretaps that if we did anything, we'd be heading for the airport. I think it's definitely one of the strongest pieces of evidence against Donna. It's such an admission of consciousness of guilt. And we know now that she was talking to Rashbaum to find out what they were thinking in Tallahassee. So he gave her the heads up, the tip, that the grand jury was supposed to meet that Wednesday. Of course, they had tickets for November 13th, which was a Monday. Coincidence? Smith 899 says, I do think Wendy manipulated everyone, but she was taught by the best. Her mom. The whole family is both frightening and disgusting at the same time. Can you imagine making fun of your child for returning money, property to the right owner? Like a 2-carat Holocaust diamond in the safety deposit box. So, of course, Smith 899 is talking about the Holocaust diamond that belonged to the Markel family that Wendy still hasn't returned. I pray Danny is haunting all of their waking and sleeping moments. And that's something that June told law enforcement, that Donna felt that she was being haunted from the grave by Dan Markel. I mean, this is really could be an opera, a play. I mean, the height of drama, just the family crumbling under this. It's like you decide to play God and everything crumbles. Everything that you prided yourself in having, money. They were a respectable family at one time, and now they're estranged from each other, fighting, running to Vietnam to hide, and to never see the grandkids that they said they did all this for. So I think it would make a great opera. That's what I've always said. Great. Before I go further, I wanted to show you a video that came up on Murder by Maestro's channel with Wendy Adelson out in Miami for another cause, draping herself with another cause. And let's just take a look at it together.
My name is Wendy Adelson, and I lead the Impact Fund.
And now please welcome to the stage the Executive Director of the Immigration Partnership and Coalition Fund, Ms. Wendy Adelson. And joining her on stage, the District Director and Deputy Chief of Staff of Congressman Carlos Curbelo, Mr. Chris Miles.
Thank you, George. I am so proud to be here tonight. As George mentioned, my name is Wendy Adelson, and I lead the Impact Fund, which is a coalition of business and civic leaders founded last year by Mike Fernandez, who's a prominent businessman in our town with a very big heart and a lot of feeling for this issue of immigration. We are united in seeking sensible and humane immigration reform. Our work is bipartisan and solution-focused. And through our work together, I got the chance to meet Chris Miles, the lovely and talented Chris Miles.
So this is from 2018, and you can see Wendy is really in her element. She was pretty much ahead of the curve, right, on this immigration issue, which is such a debated topic now. But in 2018, I don't think it had quite the focus. And she's going to talk about her family being Democratic and not meeting a Republican till she was in law school, which I find really hard to believe, but take a listen.
I'm the lovely and talented Chris Miles, and I work as the Congressman's District Director, running his offices here in Florida, and I get to work every day in a bipartisan manner on issues like immigration, climate change, and really just working to try to change the tone in politics. And I've been able to do some great stuff with Wendy, and I'm very excited to be here.
So full disclosure, my parents are Democrats. Some of my best friends are Democrats. I actually didn't meet my first Republican until I went to law school. But now party affiliation feels far less important to me than the values that we share across party lines. Chris and I are both actively involved in the pursuit of a legislative solution for DACA, for deferred action for childhood arrivals, for young people, sometimes babies brought to this country, who've grown up here, growing up as American, and thought this country was their home and their present and their future. In my role with Impact, our partners in passing legislation are the reasonable middle, like Chris and his team, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, not the loud and often extreme voices at the margins of either party. This is a time when we need thoughtful dialogue. We need a willingness to listen and to compromise for the greater good, like the Dreamers. Dogged adherence to a party line is not going to move us forward as a community, a country, or a society.
So I just find it really funny that Wendy is now the advocate for compromise and flexibility and bringing people of different ideas and different political parties together. When her divorce, her own mother, if you listen to yesterday's episode, was comparing the fight to World War II. So now she knows all about reaching across party lines and shared values and all this stuff when she had such trouble accepting Dan Markel's deep faith, and she couldn't make any compromises. And her idea of a compromise was to get, I believe, this is my opinion, to get her family together and hire hitmen to murder him. Because for this exact reason that she couldn't compromise. It's so ironic, and it's just interesting to watch her up there in her white dress, which of course has some people think people wear it to give off the idea that they're honest and moral. And I wonder how many people in that audience are familiar with what she has been accused of doing. I wonder how many in the audience know that she is an unindicted co-conspirator in this case.
For me, growing up in Miami with Cuban grandparents, when I met my first Republican, it was when I was born. But another thing that surrounded my childhood, being the grandson of exiles, was this idea that politics and government were extremely important. That and education were the two most important things. And it was something that was very central to my childhood, whether we were at the coffee window or La Ventanita at Versailles or La Canarias later on when we moved out west, like most Cuban families did. This one theme of democracy being so important was just always reiterated. And part of what I was taught was that the United States was different because, unlike other countries, we didn't submit to authoritarian strongmen. We believed in our institutions, the separation of powers, the idea of every vote counts, equality, fairness. And through the last election cycle, a lot of that got rattled, whether it was...
All right. So this is getting political. I'm not at all interested in politics, but I think it gives you an idea. You can watch the full thing on Murder by Maestro's channel. It's pretty short, but I thought I'd just give you a little taste of it because I thought it was really interesting that Wendy, if I were accused of such a thing or even suspected of doing such a thing, I don't know if I would be out in the public participating in these events. I would probably pass it to a coworker, but interesting, very interesting. She's defiant. As we know, this family is very defiant and has intense belief in their own innocence, at least publicly. So I put together maybe my top 10 or top 11 things that I thought were really exciting or interesting that happened in this case. One is, so number 11 is Donna loves Dan Rashbaum. Dan Rashbaum can do no wrong, according to Donna. I thought Dan was wonderful. I couldn't have asked for more. Remember, we heard that yesterday. And number 10, Katie McBonawa's testimony, while not being as honest, in my opinion, as I would have liked, she still held her own, and she still was effective in Charlie's trial. And hopefully, maybe she will open up now that Charlie's not paying for her defense, or the Adelson family isn't paying for her defense. 9, Charlie's extortion defense. his story to the evidence. Josh Dubin's voir dire is number 7, where he harangues the jury pool with this idea of innocence. Number 6 is June's testimony, and the whole interaction with June and Charlie in the court was very odd. And I thought just bizarre that he's still controlling her from behind the defense table. And her testimony got much weaker than it had been in the previous trials. Donna's 5, Donna's moldy money. 4, Wendy's testimony. 3, Charlie and Donna's phone calls. How could we ever forget that? Coming to the really exciting stuff, Donna's jail experience. This is a little bit backwards, but her whole hearing where she's mouthing the words while her lawyer's talking. So she's talking, saying, so say her lawyer's talking about Dr. Zap, which was really Dr. Sap. And she's saying, well, he hasn't seen me once, and shaking her head and saying, oh my gosh, or whatever out loud, so much so that the judge had to admonish her, really acting out in court, something that her lawyer should have told her to be on her best behavior, but she either couldn't control herself or was never told. And one, of course, is Donna fleeing. I mean, what an exciting event. I don't know if you guys know that Sigfredo Garcia was arrested at a gas station fleeing to, I think he had the idea he was going to flee to Cuba. So this is not the first fleeing we've excuse me. Sorry, I had to cough. We've seen in this case, and just the whole drama of it. And I wanted to look at I thought this was an indictment, but it's not. I wanted to look at this part, this bizarre part of, believe it is the search warrant. So this is part of how she got caught. So on Monday, November 13th, 2023, a friend of Charles Adelson contacted the state's attorney's office in Tallahassee. They advised Donna and Harvey contacted them Sunday, November 12th, so the day before their flight was scheduled to go, regarding travel to the Philippines. The Adelsons advised they had travel plans to Saigon until November 20th, 2023, but no further plans at the time. The Adelsons were seeking advice for airlines as well as places to stay. This family friend has known the Adelsons for over 10 years and has never had a longer than a 5-minute conversation with Donna or Harvey. They found the contact very strange. Harvey Adelson told the subject, quote, "You must not mention to Charlie anything about our plans," unquote. So then it goes forward to talk about how she was taken into custody at the Miami airport, and Agent Pat Sanford attempted to seize her cell phone. Donna attempted to pull away and prevent him from grabbing it. Donna said she was told not to give her phone to law enforcement. So who do you think gave her that advice? Wouldn't you say that would be Rashbaum? That would be my best guess. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to look at some exciting moments from Charlie's trial in just a second. If you are enjoying this episode of my True Crime Report, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode. Get access to exclusive podcasts and other bonus content by becoming a patron today. If you have a question or comment for me, shoot me a super chat and I'll do my best to answer it and read it on air. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. All right. So this was kind of an interesting compilation that was done by Law and Crime when Charlie Adelson's trial was ongoing. Of course, Jesse Weber is hosting, and I thought I'd start in where they talked about some of the more exciting moments in the case, and they start with Rashbaum's theory, which was the first time we heard this extortion theory.
Developments or shocking developments in Charlie Adelson's trial so far. So number one, there was a bombshell dropped by Charlie Adelson's defense team in their opening statement, statement where they lay out what the defense will be at trial. His attorney, Daniel Rashbaum, says, well, Charlie not only had no involvement in the crime, but Magbanawa and the shooters took the initiative here in killing Markel on their own accord. And then they decided to extort and blackmail Charlie.
What you're going to learn is that in the spring of 2014, it became apparent to Katie that her dreams of financial security with Charlie were not going to work out. You will learn that Katie heard the hitman joke. You will learn that she heard the $1 million offer and she got some ideas in her head. She says that a friend of hers had shot Professor Markel. She tells him over and over that she had nothing to do with it. But these people, she was talking too much. And her friend and these people learn about the problems that his family was having with Professor Markel. As you can imagine, his life has just forever been altered. He asks, who are these people? She won't tell him. You will learn that Charlie Adelson was told if he didn't pay within the next 48 hours, he or one of his family members would be next. You will learn that Katie repeatedly said that she had nothing to do with it and acted distraught. You will hear how she said that she would help him. You will learn about the initial payment. It wasn't $100,000.
And you also hear about how Charlie was put on a payment plan by the Latin Kings because they were very interested in having a solid stream of income, steady stream of income, because that's what that concerns to the Latin Kings.
It was more than $100,000. He took out everything he had in his safe. You're going to learn about that. The state doesn't know it.
So the defense says that Katie was the mastermind, that she plotted to extort money.
But isn't it amazing? So what do they have to support the story that Rashbaum just told? They have Charlie's word, and that's about it. And Rashbaum's cross-examinations. And Charlie thought till the end, according to him, that it was going great and he was going to walk, giving away his food. How did he think? It's just amazing to me that he didn't have a friend, have someone, I don't know, someone he met maybe in jail, I don't know what, some kind of come out of the woodwork and basically commit perjury for him. I was shocked that he thought that his word, his performance, and it certainly was rehearsed. I believe that Rashbaum went back and forth with him, drilling him, Rashbaum playing Georgia Kappelman on cross, because he seemed to know every bit of evidence in the case and had a story for it. And it didn't benefit him in the way he thought it would. I don't know if an innocent person would know, oh, yeah, that was from the April 22nd wiretap. I'm just making that up off the top of my head. So, but here's Katie's cross. Disappointing because, of course, Sigfredo Garcia and Katie's defense attorneys were both paid by the Adelson family, I believe, and were talking to each other. I'm going to have an episode, I promise, coming up very soon on that.
Out of Charlie after he mistakenly told her all of the problems that Wendy was going through with Dan and that she knew the Adelson family had money. It's interesting. We haven't heard this theory before, so it's going to be fascinating to see the defense exploring this. Also makes me wonder whether Charlie Adelson will testify, as problematic as that would be. Number two, that brings me to another big shocker, and that is when Catherine Magbanawa took the stand. Now, during her trial, she testified that she had no involvement in what happened, right? Well, now, testifying against Charlie Adelson, she says she lied.
Did you have a trial in your case?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you testify?
Yes, ma'am.
You testified on your own behalf.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And when you testified, were you truthful with the jury?
No, ma'am. I was not.
What was your defense when you were tried?
That I had nothing to do with it.
Was that true?
No, ma'am. It was not.
Were you in the middle?
Yes, ma'am. I was.
So Sigfredo Garcia was involved.
Yes, ma'am. He was.
So why tell the truth now?
I believe that the truth needed to come out now so that the family can get some type of closure.
Why didn't the truth need to come out last year or the year before or the year before that?
I was trying to defend myself.
You were trying to get off.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you think you'd be successful in your trial with that defense?
I thought so.
And isn't that testimony more believable now that we've heard the wiretaps or the jailhouse calls, excuse me, with Donna saying, we thought it was going great. Everybody was saying wonderful, wonderful. Don't you think that they were talking up Sigfredo Garcia? Everybody's going to be okay as long as everyone stays quiet and we're all going to be absolved of this. I don't think they really believed that when it came to Sigfredo and Katie, but they just wanted her to protect Charlie. And that's what she did. And I think she has a really good shot at, I don't know, that's the best appeal that I could think of, which is to say, look, the Adelsons paid for my attorney. But then, of course, she's going to have to admit that she perjured herself. Oh, it's not a good idea to lie on the stand. Just some advice.
Has anyone promised you anything for your testimony here today?
No, ma'am.
Weren't you originally offered immunity for cooperation in this case?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
But you didn't take us up on that.
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Because you thought you could get off completely.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Who came up with the idea to kill Dan Markel?
Charlie.
When did the defendant first bring this idea up to you?
My first recollection was around Halloween of 2013.
Around Halloween or on?
Look at Charlie Adelson's weird, nervous, slow blinking that he does when unfavorable testimony is spoken in court. It is so weird. If I'm remembering right, I thought Durst had the same kind of weird blinking too, Robert Durst. It's odd. It's like a nervous habit, I would think. Let me know what you think it is.
On
Halloween, yes, ma'am. He got in the car with me and he asked me a question.
What was the question?
Do you know anybody that can harm someone?
And did you know anybody that could harm someone?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Well, that's something. If you can't believe a convicted murderer, who can you believe, right? But the truth is, when you think about it, her coming out and going full force against Charlie Adelson, saying, yeah, I was a part of it, but so was Charlie. It was his idea to kill Dan. It was not mine. It wasn't Garcia's. It was not Rivera. Can't say I'm surprised by that. Of course, she would want to try to get off of the murder charges and not admit her involvement. But if you think about it, admitting that she was involved is definitely going to complicate any chance she has in an appeal. But also,
Right. And that was brought up by Rashbaum. That don't you have an appeal still pending? That was the weakest part. That was the strongest part of Rashbaum's cross and the weakest part of her testimony. But I don't believe she went full force. And I remember all these channels, Court TV, Law and Crime, saying the state shouldn't bring Katie up to testify. She's going to be a horrible witness. She's lied too much. And I believe she held her own.
if Charlie really is the mastermind and the reason that she's behind bars for life, not surprising that she would want to take him down. But let's actually talk about how she did under cross-examination by Charlie Adelson's defense counsel.
Pretty soon after you got arrested, you were offered to cooperate against Charlie Adelson and the other Adelsons, and you would get to go home to your kids, right?
Yes, sir.
And your lawyers told you about that offer.
Yes, sir, they did.
If you took the state's deal, then you would have been let out of jail immediately, right? That's what your lawyers told you.
If I took their deal, yes, sir.
But you didn't take the offer.
No, I didn't. Well, the deal was to give up Charlie.
And you couldn't do that.
Because in order to give up Charlie, I had to give up Sigfredo, the father of my children. So I couldn't do that.
Charlie Adelson didn't force you to take the deal, not take the deal, right?
No, I had no communication with Charlie.
Now,
So is that a little slip? She mentioned Charlie first. Well, because in order to take the deal, I would have to give up Charlie. And that seemed like it was almost the end of the sentence there. Then she added Sigfredo. I think the first answer is closest to the truth there. Everything, I mean, the Adelsons bought everybody's silence. How could Sigfredo Garcia and Katie afford these kind of private lawyers? And with Katie, it was 2 trials. They are expensive. And now that she's convicted and Charlie's convicted, when she was convicted, all of a sudden, public defender. And we've had 2 public defenders already recuse themselves from being Katie's public defender because they said they went to school with Dan Markel, FSU. I mean, they went to FSU where Dan Markel taught.
the real reason you didn't cooperate, and you made it clear, is because Charlie Adelson had absolutely nothing to do with the murder of Professor Markel. Isn't that the case?
I didn't cooperate because in order to give up Charlie, I'd have to give up Sigfredo.
Well, let's talk about the testimony in your first trial. You were asked, do you have information that Charlie Adelson was involved in this? Answer, do I have information? I don't have personal information. Do you recall that?
No, sir, I do not.
You don't recall saying that in your first trial?
No, sir, I do not.
Would you like to see a transcript of
Yes,
it?
I will.
Yes, so perhaps the jury will believe that she didn't tell the truth at first because she was protecting herself and the father of her children, Sigfredo Garcia. But as with any witness who admits that they lied in the past, particularly one who says that they lied to a jury, the question, of course, is why should we believe you now? So on this idea of whether Charlie was the mastermind or simply a victim of extortion as laid out by the defense, we also heard from Wendy Adelson. So prosecutors take the time to tie her to the crime and also dispelling Charlie's defense.
When did you learn that Catherine Magbanua was blackmailing your brother for the murder of your ex-husband?
Today.
Yeah, did you learn that today along with all of us?
Well, I learned that someone made that argument. I don't know whether it's true or not true.
Okay. You have no knowledge of it.
I have no knowledge.
In all the years this has been pending,
In all of the years this has been pending,
your brother has known who killed your child's father, and you didn't know.
I did not know.
How did the killers in this case know that Dan Markel was planning to leave town the day after the killing?
I have no idea.
You knew he was planning to leave town the next day, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Did you convey that information to anyone?
Absolutely not.
To your knowledge, did your brother have that information?
I don't know why he would have known that.
So if the killers were told it has to be done today because he's leaving town tomorrow, we don't know how they knew that.
I have no idea how they knew that.
But it would have to come from someone familiar with Dan Markel's schedule, wouldn't it?
They would have to find out somehow. I don't know how.
You know, it's like my parents have more reason to dislike Danny than almost anyone else. Is that what you said?
That is what I said. I was saying that in the context of talking to law enforcement for hours and hours and trying to help them figure out who might be responsible.
Right. And who did you tell them might be responsible?
Well, I told them many, many people. But are you asking about this particular moment right here?
You told them your family might be responsible.
Or
didn't
potentially
you?
someone to do with a former student or his current girlfriend. I mentioned lots of people that I thought could be responsible.
You sure did, Wendy. You sure did mention lots of people, namely Jeffrey Lacasse. But isn't it interesting that Wendy also says that we don't understand damning quotes because they're all taken out of context? The same argument that Charlie made to Donna on the phone, that all the wiretapes and the surveillance video from the Dolce Vita tapes, they're all taken out of context. So what context do we need to make them look innocent? That's my question. What would be the context? Same thing here for Wendy. We don't understand the context of that her family hates Dan Markel the most, and they're the most likely to be culpable. Okay, Wendy.
Okay. And of the lots of people that could have been responsible, your family was one.
Yep.
Do you want the culpable parties held accountable for murdering the father of your children?
Absolutely. I'm grateful they're already in jail.
But not if it's your family.
It's not my family.
I mean, somebody hired them, right?
Not necessarily.
Somebody paid them.
I learned something this morning.
Yeah, me too.
Again, I have to point out that Wendy Adelson has never been criminally charged in connection with the death of her ex-husband, but that does.
I have to point out that Wendy Adelson has never been criminally charged in the death of her ex-husband, so please don't sue us, Wendy Adelson. We know you're a lawyer, and we're just a lowly reporting outfit who reports on trials. Funny.
Doesn't mean that prosecutors who have laid out that she's an unindicted co-conspirator won't ask these tough questions trying to show that she knew what was happening and was a part of it. Okay, as we continue talking about some of these shocking developments from the Charlie Adelson murder trial, the man accused of orchestrating the murder for hire plot of his former brother-in-law, let's move on now to Luis Rivera. So investigators say that he and Sigfredo Garcia were the actual hitmen. Rivera again took a deal, pled guilty in exchange for testifying against his accomplices. But here's what he had to say about Katie, why the killing took place, and whether this was about blackmailing Charlie as the defense claims.
All right. So do you know why Garcia or how Garcia came to know about this murder or this job?
His girl,
Who's that?
Katie.
All right. So am I correct that Katie hired Garcia and Garcia hired you?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was to actually come to Tallahassee to do the murder?
It was me and him.
You and Garcia?
Yes, ma'am.
But not Katie.
No.
So she stayed in Miami.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And who was to get the money once the job was done?
Katie.
All right. And did she get the money?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where she got the money from?
Mm,
Do you know where she got the money from?
Yeah, the people. She got
Who are the people?
the dentist. I called them the dentist at that time.
The dentist?
Like Wendy and her brother.
Did you originally describe the purpose behind this murder as helping a lady in Tallahassee get her kids?
What you mean?
Did you describe I know your purpose was money,
Yeah.
but whoever did the hiring had a different purpose, right?
Yes.
And what was your understanding of that purpose?
For the kids.
To get these kids.
Get the kids back.
Okay. And do you know any more about that? Which family member did what?
More damning testimony and more blinking. Slow, intense, frequent blinking from Charlie Adelson. It's so weird. But Luis Rivera is a great witness. I haven't seen him testify badly yet in any of these trials.
And whose kids they were or anything like that?
No, I don't think I know the kids was Wendy. That's her name.
Wendy, they're Wendy's kids?
Yeah, that's the only thing I know.
Have you ever had any kind of contact with any member of the Adelson family?
No, ma'am.
During the time that Catherine McBanoa was dating the dentist, were you around her during that time?
I mean, I've seen her a few times.
During the times that you saw her while she was dating the dentist, did she ever brag to you about the dentist at all?
No, ma'am.
Did she ever tell you the dentist has a lot of money?
No, ma'am.
The dentist has a safe full of cash in his home?
No.
These were devastating questions and answers in this case, because the whole extortion thing, it's so unbelievable on its face. But just say if you get one or two jurors who think it might be possible that it happened and are leaning towards believing it, it's really hard to believe if Katie hasn't shown any interest in Charlie's money or flaunted it, because you would think that's right. The beginning of this is Katie running her mouth. You know, those women that can never keep quiet. They're always running their mouth. That's the way Charlie put it on the stand, running her mouth to her friend. That's supposed to be the beginning. Isn't it odd that Luis Rivera's hung around Katie and she's never bragged about all the money Charlie has, all the cash he has?
So do you even know who the dentist is? I mean, do you know who he is here
Never
in the
met
courtroom?
him. Never met him in my life until today.
Okay. Well, the dentist's lawyers have indicated that you and Garcia got this idea on your own to come to Tallahassee and kill the professor. Is that true?
No. A good one.
Did you kill him and then try to get Katie to blackmail the dentist?
No.
So you hear prosecutors trying to move away from this theory from the defense that it was Rivera and Garcia and McBanoa who took the initiative on their own to kill Markel. Prosecutors are trying to show that these were guys who were just paid to do a job, and that it was because of the Adelsons that this happened. Now let's hear what happened on cross-examination by Charlie's attorneys.
So before we hit that was so believable. No, that's ridiculous. That's what you hear in Luis Rivera's no. Like, no one was extorted. What are you talking about? But on cross, I think Rashbaum really takes advantage of the fact that he is not a talker, not a smooth talker, and can be led to answer in ways that, I don't know, aren't as sure and firm as he was in direct. You'll see. I'll point it out.
So let's briefly recap all the lies that they told you. They lied to you about the purpose of the trip going to Tallahassee, right?
Yeah.
They lied to you about who the lady was on the street.
Yeah.
They lied to you about the amount of money they received.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think I was just behind. I was just making sure. I thought maybe that it had frozen for a second, but not. All right. We'll get back into Luis Rivera's cross-examination. Go back a second.
They lied to you about who the lady was on the street.
Yeah.
They lied to you about the amount of money they received.
Yeah.
Isn't it possible that they lied to you about the purpose of the job to begin with?
They don't even got the money. Where they gonna get the money from?
Isn't it possible that you thought it was a murder for hire, but it was really an extortion?
Extortion to who?
Charlie Adelson, not from you, but from
Oh,
them.
okay.
Isn't it possible?
I don't know.
So that's interesting, right? Garcia, Magbanua, they kept on lying to you about all these details. Is it not possible that they lied to you about why this was being?
Yeah. If I don't know. I think that it wasn't the points that Charlie and Dan Rashbaum, I'm sure, thought that was. They didn't score it with that. I don't know. But they got maybe a little wiggle room. If they got maybe Charlie's right. If they got some very pro defendant juror, might have been swayed a little bit by that, but I don't know. So much damage was done in the direct. It's really hard to undo it in cross. Not that I'm on team defense, but I just find it so interesting that Dan Rashbaum, if Charlie Adelson, now he's not the most reliable narrator, if what he's saying is true, that Dan Rashbaum was really telling him he's winning the whole time. I think that's crazy. When the people who were at the trial said the momentum was totally for the prosecution, and by the end, it was just people felt it was just a matter of time before a guilty verdict came in.
Being carried out in the first place, that maybe it was their idea and not Charlie's. Maybe this was an extortion plot. Kill Dan Markel, and then we'll try to extort unsuspecting Charlie Adelson. Defense really trying to raise reasonable doubt here as to Charlie's involvement. Okay, so I want to finish this up now with the testimony of two people who were once close to Charlie Adelson. They've testified before, but I guess, testifying now against Charlie Adelson directly has a little bit of a different meaning. So first up is his girlfriend at the time this all happened. And she talks about Charlie's demeanor, particularly after the infamous bump incident I mentioned. As I said, when the undercover FBI agent bumped into Donna Adelson on the street pretending to be an associate of the killers in an effort to get Charlie and Magbanua to start talking. We'll listen to what June Umchinda had to say about Charlie.
During the time frame of the bump, the bump in April, but prior to Ms. Magbanua's arrest in October, was the defendant picking up communication with Catherine Magbanua? Did you notice that he was communicating with her more?
I don't know if it was that time frame, like I said.
During this time frame that I'm talking about, did the defendant express concerns to you that his phone was being tapped?
I mean, it was probably during that time frame, but he did say that at some point.
What was the defendant's behavior like after Catherine Magbanua's arrest?
Well, I guess his behavior was just someone that's being convicted of murder, or not convicted, accused of murder. I'm sorry.
All right. Was he, quote, very scary to be around?
I mean, I might have said that.
You might have said that, or you did say that?
I think I did say that because we had a fight, so I was afraid one time.
Was he, quote, just like angry and different?
I guess he was, yeah.
Was he violent, agitated, and short-fused during that time frame?
I believe so.
Did he have trouble sleeping or being alone? Didn't want to be home? Do you recall saying that?
Yes.
When the case came up, did everything just tick him off?
Yes.
Did he start getting really red and screaming and take random walks, like just acting like a crazy person?
Yes. Yeah.
Did he?
I mean, you can see her eyes darting to the defense table through this whole thing. Her voice is shaking. I thought this was a great illustration of the control Charlie Adelson still had over her, and shows that he can be very effective when he wants to be the maestro and wants to coercively control someone's behavior. I mean, isn't this funny that this is the same relationship that June described as a fairy tale? Doesn't this sound like a fairy tale? someone irritable, can't sleep, thinks their phone is tapped, goes on random walks, angry walks, short fuse. Isn't that the definition of a fairy tale?
Get a second phone around this time frame and possibly even a third phone?
I saw one other phone. I don't know about a third.
Suspicious, right? Now you could say, and I think this was brought out by the defense, look, Charlie may have been acting this way because the media was insinuating that he and his family had involvement. So maybe it's not so much he actually had anything to do with the killing, but look what's happening around him. But then we heard from Ryan Fitzpatrick, Adelson's former friend. Listen to what Adelson allegedly said to him.
Did he ever make a statement to you about murder?
Charlie, as you've heard in testimony and depots, that he made a lot of tasteless jokes, and he said something along the lines of, "You can get away with anything, you can get away with murder if you keep your mouth shut."
When was that statement made?
Jeez, years ago.
Before or after this murder?
It would be after.
Was his behavior after, are you familiar with the arrest that occurred in May of 2016, I should have clarified.
Katie's arrest?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And did his behavior change at that point?
Yes, ma'am.
And did he seem relieved and less stressed out after she got arrested?
No, ma'am, he did not.
What was his demeanor after her arrest?
Nervousness, agitation, stress.
So he seemed to get more stressed out after she was
Yes, ma'am.
Oh boy. The TV comment, now this comment. Defense has to really stress the idea that these are bad jokes and not admissions of guilt. Well, there you have it. Some shocking details in the Charlie Adelson trial so far. Let's see what happens next.
Okay, so I thought that was a really good wrap up of some of the more important testimony in the trial. Gonna take a quick break. When I get back, we can look at Wendy Adelson's fiery redirect in Charlie Adelson's trial. Certainly one of the more explosive things that happened in this case in 2023. If you are enjoying this episode of my True Crime Report, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode. Get access to exclusive podcasts and other bonus content by becoming a patron today. If you have a question or comment for me, shoot me a super chat and I'll do my best to answer it and read it on air. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. Oh, thank you so much, Susan Swan, for becoming a patron. Appreciate it. There is a new episode up talking about the Adelson case and a whole bunch of exclusive content on there. So thank you, patrons, for keeping the show going, allowing me to do this. So this is Wendy Adelson's fiery redirect. And I'm wondering what you guys think. If when she got very emphatic and said that she really wants to know who murdered Dan Markel, and it was she gets she gets accused and she pushes back. Do you think that was effective or believable? Kind of the flared nostril moment in her testimony.
The long list of plans that you went over with Mr. Ashman that you were going to have in Tallahassee post murder date. None of those plans happened, right?
No,
Because you moved to South Florida, right?
because I felt unsafe to stay here, yes.
And did you feel safe in South Florida?
No,
Did you buy a house in Tallahassee after the murder?
no, I did not.
Did you rent a house in Tallahassee after the murder?
No, I didn't live in Tallahassee after the murder.
Did the boys go to school that fall here.
But isn't it interesting? Wouldn't you say if you feel unsafe, isn't it an odd thing to do? A public event like the one I showed at the beginning of this episode? Isn't it odd to host an event for the charity of which you work? Wouldn't you want to pass it along to a coworker and say, you do it? If you really feel unsafe, if you really feel so unsafe that you have to change your son's names, even one of your son's middle names?
Here in Tallahassee.
No, all our plans were broken.
And what was the purpose of those questions? Of course you moved to South Florida. You didn't have plans in Tallahassee that got executed. Why were you asked about all those things?
I don't know why I was asked questions by the defense counsel.
The book event that you were asked about, did that event happen?
I didn't speak at the event, but the event still happened.
Have you had several events related to that book that have happened?
I have.
And what events were those?
Do you mean just in Tallahassee or do you mean in other places?
Everywhere.
I've spoken at various schools about human trafficking and about my book. I think there was one event that still happened in Tallahassee about a year later.
And is that the only book you've written, or have you written more than one book?
I've only written one book.
What was the book about?
The book was about human trafficking and about the vulnerabilities that lead to trafficking, the problems when it occurs, and basically how to recover from it after.
Where was the book set?
It was set in a fictional town.
What was the name of the fictional town?
Hiawassee Springs.
So Hiawassee. Is it located in the panhandle of Florida?
No, I used to see the name when I was driving from Tallahassee to Orlando, so it's somewhere in between.
And was the place modeled after Tallahassee?
It was definitely somewhere in Florida, but not supposed to be about Tallahassee, no.
Who was the central character in that book?
So there's 3 central characters. One was one of my clients, kind of a composite character from Eastern Europe. One was kind of a composite character of many clients I've represented from Latin America. And one was a public interest lawyer.
And was the public interest lawyer Lily?
Yes.
And is that the character that's sort of based after yourself?
No, really more based after a friend of mine.
Right. It was more based off of a friend of mine who was in an unhappy marriage and who was also a public interest lawyer. I love how she introduces all of the minor characters first and leaves them the most central character to the end. That's obviously the point of the question. She's so defiant and passive aggressive in this testimony. It's so funny.
And was Hiawassee, Florida, quote, just a small stop on the way back to what we had previously known as civilization? Is that a quote from your book?
That sounds like a quote from my book, yeah.
And who's the husband of Lily, the public interest lawyer?
You want his name in the book?
Yes.
I think it was Josh Stone.
All right. And what was Josh's employment?
Josh was in English.
I think the name of the character was Dan Markel. Nothing to do with my husband. We were living in Hiawassee Springs. And he was incredibly controlling and abusive, but nothing to do with my life, right? It's so funny.
English professor.
I'm sorry, what was your answer?
Josh was an English professor.
A professor, where did he teach?
It's been a while. I wrote the book over 10 years ago. I don't remember what I named the university in the
North Florida State University.
That sounds right.
NFSU.
NFSU sounds right. Yeah.
All right. And in the book, does Lily lament, quote, we moved to this godforsaken place for Josh's career?
Yes, that sounds like a line Lily would say.
All right. When you looked at page...
Don't you mean, Wendy, it sounds like a line your friend would say? Your friend, the friend that Lily is based on? Isn't that what you mean, Wendy?
187 of the divorce document on cross, and I'll hand that back to you. This is actually my copy. Let me just turn back to 187.
So, according to Charlie's jailhouse calls, he was flirting with a girl in court. A girl, that's what he calls women, girl, in a woman in court. And he was like, wow, she really likes me. And then Dan said, his lawyer said to him, that's your sister, Wendy. What is the deal with that story? They have such a weird relationship. They're more like a couple anyway. What is the point of telling that story? I can't even believe it, that you wouldn't recognize your own sister in court. It's so unbelievable. And he also looks like, he really looks kind of like seasick watching Wendy testify. Very pale and almost a little green to my eye. And we know that this is a family of weak stomachs.
Do you see the quote that you read previously from that page?
I don't.
Okay. It had to do with, just if I can find it, that you were very unhappy in the marriage. I think it's the third paragraph there.
I see that line.
Okay, the wife has been very unhappy in the marriage and files her petition for dissolution of marriage in August 2012. The husband continues to characterize this as abandonment, and then it goes on to say that he had been disparaging you to some of the folks at the law school. Do you remember reading that?
I do.
Was that intended to be the place in this binder where you allege emotional abuse by your husband?
I mean, I think it's emotionally abusive to suggest somebody has mental health issues.
Okay.
George is like, okay, but what if it's true? So if you are married to someone who has emotional issues, certainly Jeffrey Lacasse said as the relationship went on, he realized that this is someone, at first he thought she had everything together, really unstable. But I also wonder how much of that crying was practicing her acting ability for when she knew she had to be called in and she had to get hysterical on cue. So it's curious. Certainly she had him wrapped around her finger for a good deal of that relationship. And it seemed to take Jeffrey Lacasse, has a PhD in social work, a long time to figure out that, I think it's his psychiatrist who told him that he believed that she was a psychopath. So it took him a long time to figure out that certainly his psychiatrist's opinion, that Wendy had a personality disorder. But to Wendy, it's something wrong with you. It's always the way this family works. If you have any criticism of them, it's something wrong with you. So there's something wrong with Georgia Kappelman because she has evidence against this family and is working hard to see that justice is done. She's phony, she's fake, she's dumbing down the evidence. She's using a Southern accent when she doesn't really have one. She's getting folksy with the jury just to get an unfair advantage. Those were some of their criticisms.
What is the prof's blog? You were asked about that on Cross.
Yeah, it was a blog that Danny started with some of his colleagues to kind of promote community in the law professor world.
And who reads the profs?
Probably
Profs
other
blog.
law professors and people interested in becoming law professors.
Who is
And the Latin Kings, right? We know them. The Latin Kings and their friends are big readers of the prof blog. That's my favorite part of Luis Rivera's testimony when Georgia Kappelman asked him if he read about where Dan Markel's whereabouts in the prof blog. And he's like, the blog, because I don't think he even knows what a blog is. He's like, the blog was Wendy. And yes, in 2024, look for my t-shirts coming soon. The blog was Wendy.
is on the Crim Prof listserv?
I don't know.
Were you on the listserv for that prof's blog?
I may have been on the listserv at some point.
Do you remember seeing the post that you were shown on Cross?
I do.
Okay. And the post says something about Danny and I are planning to attend a conference that will begin Sunday, July 20th. Is there any other information on what you were shown about Dan's travel plans post-murder other than that?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat the question?
The post says Danny and I guess it's another professor writing this thing. Danny and I are planning to attend a conference that will begin Sunday, July 20th. Is that the type of information that he would typically have on something like the prof's blog or Facebook?
That sounds right.
Okay, but as far as the date he's leaving, the flight he's on, that kind of stuff, would that typically be on the prof's blog?
He wouldn't put what flight number he was on, but he would almost always communicate when he was going on a trip.
Okay, so going to a conference that starts July 20th might be an example.
Flying to New York tomorrow would be an example.
Okay, but
Not,
he didn't
not
put
a flight number.
But he didn't put flying to New York tomorrow on this occasion.
No.
You were referenced several times, not on direct examination by the state, but by your brother's attorney on cross as a co-conspirator. Are you charged in this case?
No.
This isn't your trial, is it?
No.
Is your brother charged with conspiring with you to do a murder?
No.
Is he charged with conspiring with you to plan a murder?
No.
Is he charged with soliciting you to do a murder?
No.
Who is he charged with doing those things with?
I don't think anyone.
Have you had an opportunity to review his indictment in this case?
That was so unbelievable. So she's not keeping track of it at all. And she's advising her parents not to read the paper. She just doesn't know what Charlie is tried with being a lawyer, hasn't looked at anything, hasn't looked at the indictment, looked at nothing. Give me a break. Her lies are such whoppers. It's so unbelievable. And she has immunity. But they're all together. They're all in this web together. So they feel like they all have to protect each other. This family.
I have not.
Give you an opportunity to take a look at that document to yourself. Who is your brother alleged to have done these crimes with?
Catherine D. Magbanowa.
Were you on the wire in this case, Ms. Adelson?
No.
So when the bump happened, are you familiar with the event I'm referencing as the bump?
I am now.
When law enforcement approached your mother on the street and handed her a piece of paper?
Yes.
Okay, when that occurred, who did your mother call?
I don't know.
Not you, right?
Not me.
Okay. And once your brother found out about the bump, did he call you about it?
No.
Who did he call?
I don't know.
Well, you listened to the calls to authenticate the voices, didn't you?
Just to hear the voices, not to hear the content of the calls.
Okay. And the voices were your brother's voice, right?
But I listened to the calls just to hear who was on them, so I don't know what content they're referencing.
I heard your answer. My question to you now is, your brother's voice was on the calls.
He was on some of the calls I listened to.
Your mother's voice was on the calls.
She was on some of the calls I listened to.
Did you have any secret meetings with your brother post bump?
So just some of the calls. So notice she's going to refrain it in a way that minimizes her brother's participation and her mother's participation. They were just on some of the calls, as if the other calls were, I don't know, other people ordering pizza. Some of the calls were about them participating, conspiring to murder my ex-husband. And there were other calls of, people ordering food, neighbors, things like that. I mean, what is she talking about?
That happened in South Florida?
No.
You were asked about Jeffrey Lacoste and the way that your relationship ended. What is OkCupid?
OkCupid is a dating website.
Were you on that dating website?
I was.
Were you on that dating website at the time that you were dating Mr. Lacoste?
No, I wasn't.
And were you speaking? So I guess if you weren't on it, you weren't speaking to multiple men from the website during the time you were dating Mr. Lacoste. And I'll remind you that you provided your phone in this case, and it was cell-brighted, downloaded.
Objection, argument. Right.
Prosecutor giving her a strong warning not to lie, saying we've got the evidence. And wait, let's just back the truck up for a minute here. Wendy Adelson is the lawyer of the Adelson family and just said under oath that she never reviewed her dentist brother's indictment. We're going to hit a break. Don't go anywhere. There's much more to come from the prosecution right after this.
A brilliant law professor gunned down.
In the midst of a bitter custody battle.
Now the victim's former brother-in-law, a prominent South Florida dentist, accused of being the mastermind behind the murder.
Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson.
3 people have already been convicted for their role in the plot.
Now, will Charlie Adelson's own words come back to haunt him?
The Dentist Mastermind Murder Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Do you want the culpable parties held accountable for murdering the father of your children?
Absolutely. I'm grateful they're already in jail.
But not if it's your family.
It's not my family.
I mean, somebody hired him, right?
Not necessarily.
Somebody paid him.
I learned something this morning.
Yeah, me too. You didn't want him held accountable if it was your family members. Didn't you tell law enforcement that?
That's not what I told law enforcement.
What did you tell law enforcement?
I told them that the person who did this should be held responsible and that I had nothing to do with it.
Page 122, lines 7 through 12. If somebody tried to kill my ex-husband, they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. The investigator says, regardless of who it is, and your answer is, I mean, it would be different if I thought it were my brother.
But I don't think it was my family, is what I said.
Different now, isn't it?
No, it's not different. That's exactly
different
what I
today,
said
isn't
right
it?
here. No, that's not right.
No further questions.
Yeah, very strong part of, I thought Georgia scored a lot of points there. And Wendy is going to argue till she's blue in the face. That's not what I said. That's not what I said. But we all remember she said it would be different if it were my brother. If it would be different if it were my family. And there's her brother sitting there. And there she is telling unbelievable whoppers. One after the next. So quite amazing. I think I'm going to leave it here for today. Thanks so much for listening and hanging out. I hope you have a wonderful celebration tonight. Have some fun, and we'll meet back in the new year. Have a great night, everybody.